Amen. Well, the book of Ecclesiastes, it's probably one of the more misinterpreted books in all of the Bible because people don't really understand its context and they'll maybe just grab a verse or two out of it and try to apply it and end up maybe kind of missing the point. But first, let's talk a little bit about an introduction. So, Ecclesiastes, the word is. The root word actually, it's translated from Hebrew into Greek, then into English. The Greek root word for Ecclesiastes is the word like ecclesia, which is where we get our word for church or assembly. So the word Ecclesiastes is literally just like to be assembled together. So these are things that Solomon learned throughout his life as he was assembled together with people. And that's kind of the idea where this title comes from, Ecclesiastes. It's in the poetic portion of Scripture. So if you remember, the Bible's divided into all these different sections. You have the first 5 books are the books of Moses, the Torah. Then you have the history from Joshua onward to Nehemiah, Esther. From Joshua to Esther, you have the history, and then you have the poetic books, which are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. So this is part of the poetic books, and that's important to know because as we're reading it, we should know what kind of genre of writing it is, in the same way that we would kind of look at Psalms in kind of a poetic light or Proverbs. We need to have that same kind of mindset as we're looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. And kind of the whole theme of this book is and we'll see here in a little bit, it's Solomon writing it, but it's Solomon writing it, and it's about his perspective or his realization, his observation of what life is like without the Lord, what life is like without Jesus. So all these statements that he's going to make about life and about the world, they're true if you lack a relationship with Jesus. It is emptiness, it is vanity, none of it does matter. But then when you apply Jesus to the equation, it changes the whole outlook. Solomon wrote this, and Solomon wrote 3 books in the Old Testament. He wrote Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. And just to remind you a little bit about Solomon and to get us kind of up to speed onto probably when he wrote this book, many believe it's later on in his life, which makes sense. We'll see that towards even the end of the book in a few weeks, how that's probably the case. But in 1 Kings chapter 3, starting in verse number 3, we see kind of the ball that got rolling in Solomon's life that allowed him to write the book of Proverbs. 1 Kings chapter 3, starting in verse 3, after Solomon kind of became king, it says, "And Solomon loved the Lord, and he was walking in the statutes of his father David, except that he sacrificed and he burnt incense at the high places. Now the king, he went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place, and Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said to him, 'Ask, what shall I give you?' And Solomon said, 'You have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth and righteousness and uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for me, and you have given me a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I am a little child, and I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?' And the speech, it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Then God said to him, 'Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked for a long life for yourself, nor have you asked for riches for yourself, nor have you asked the life of your enemies, but you have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before, nor shall there be anyone like you arise after you.' And I've also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be anyone like you among the kings all the days of your life. So, the beginning of Solomon's reign as king, he's super desperate. He doesn't know anything. God appears to him in this dream and says, "Ask and I'll give it to you." And Solomon has enough self awareness to know that he doesn't know much, and he asks God for knowledge, for wisdom, for understanding, and God gives it to him. And with that, he also blessed his life in other ways because God was pleased with that response. Well, that's kind of the beginning of Solomon's reign. But the problem is, Solomon didn't stay dear and true and close to the Lord. He wandered off quite a bit throughout his life. So much so that towards the end of his life, in 1 Kings chapter 11, we get an update on how Solomon's going, and this will tie into his mindset as he's writing Ecclesiastes. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, and here's where his problem starts. It says, "But King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, the Amorites, the Edomites, the Sidonians, and the Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, 'You shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods.' And Solomon clung to these in love." The very ladies that God told his people, "I don't want you marrying," because nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with race, everything to do with who they worship. Because they don't worship me, God says, you are going, just think about this logically. If you love someone, if you fall in love with someone that doesn't love Jesus, don't you think that's going to divide your heart? Yeah, because you love someone who doesn't love Jesus. And God, he knows that, so he warns his people. He says, "I just don't want you intermarrying with these people that don't know me, because what's going to happen is they're going to divide your heart. They're going to lead you astray to their false gods." And that's exactly what happened with Solomon and his wives, plural. He clung to them in love, verse 3 goes on to say, and he had 700 wives and princesses and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it was so, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. For Solomon, he went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Amorites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he did not fully follow the Lord, as did his father David. And then Solomon, he builds these high places, verse 7, which is where they would worship these false gods. He built the high places for Chimaroth and the abomination of Moab on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the people of Ammon. So Solomon starts out good. He's son of King David. He's desperate for the Lord. He gets this supernatural wisdom. But as he rules and reigns, he starts to fall in love with these ladies that God warned him not to. They capture his heart. They then divide his heart. And he starts worshiping their false gods instead of worshiping the one and true and living God, which causes him to go in this big season throughout his life as king of Israel, backslidden. And that's where he's coming to these conclusions in Ecclesiastes. He's observing his life, not walking with the Lord, and he's seeing how empty it actually is, as we see starting in verses 1 and 2. It says, "The word of the preacher, the son of David, king in Israel." Like, nowhere in this book do we actually see Solomon's name mentioned, but traditionally, the Jewish people believe that Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, and then also, because it says the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. David's only had one son that was actually the king of Jerusalem, and that would be Solomon. So it seems to be pretty obvious it's him. Now, that word preacher that's used in verse 1, don't think of it like what we think today as preachers, but it's like a collector, or literally like a searcher, like a philosopher more. This is what the philosopher, the collector of ideas, the searcher of ideas has discovered in Jerusalem. Verse 2, he starts out with kind of what he's concluded about life. He says, "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." 29 times the word vanity is going to be used in the book of Ecclesiastes. That's kind of his point. He looks around at life without walking with the Lord, and he says it's vanity, or emptiness, or not satisfying, or of no substance. Life just really has no meaning, he's realizing, even as he's going to list all these all of these things that he's accomplished throughout his life. Verse 3, what profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? What's the point? What's the reward? What's the profit of a man who works so hard constantly every day? This phrase in verse 3, under the sun, he's going to use a lot as well throughout this book. And this is the vantage point. This is the location. This is the mindset in which Solomon is writing this book, from an earthly standpoint. Under the sun, the idea of on this earth. It's an earthly mindset in which he's observing these things. Verse 4, he says, I've looked around, and one generation passes away, and then another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. People get old and they die, and then a new generation comes, and those people get old and they die, and a new generation comes. And he goes, that just keeps going. People don't last. People don't remain. People don't stick around, he says. But this earth, it stays strong through it all. Now, some people, right there in verse 4 when it says, but the earth abides forever, this is an example of how people misapply verses in Ecclesiastes, because the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, take this verse and say, the earth we're living on right now is actually not going to be destroyed like it says in 2 Peter and Revelation, but the earth we live on right now is going to endure forever. And they'll say, open your Bible to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 4. And they go, don't you agree what God's word says? It says it's going to abide forever. It's like it does say that, but not in that context. The context is man is perishing, man is going away, but the world sticks around. That's the idea. The Bible is very clear in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10, that this planet that you and I are living on is going to burn up one day. 2 Peter 3:10 says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with a fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. So the idea of Solomon saying the earth is going to abide forever is not literally this earth is never going to come to an end, but in comparison to the cycle of people passing through, the earth remains and people are not. Verse 5, the sun also rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The sun rises, it goes down, and then it goes right back to the very place it rose again the very next day. What he's focusing in on here is cycles. People get old, then new people get born, and then they get old, and there's a cycle in life. There's also a cycle in just looking at how the sun moves. Then he says in verse 6, he says, the wind goes towards the south, and then it turns around and it goes to the north, and the wind whirls about continually, and it comes again on its circuit. The wind just kind of blows around. There's a cycle to the wind. Verse 7, all the rivers, they run into the sea, yet the sea is not full to the place from which the rivers come. There they return again. The water cycle. If you've ever driven, I mean, if you didn't understand the water cycle, you'd think to yourself, how come the oceans aren't filling up? Because literally all of these rivers flow into the ocean constantly. They don't stop. The Columbia River, it's massive, and it just keeps on pouring all this water from all this side of the west into the river or into the ocean, and it doesn't fill up. Why? Because evaporation takes place, and then it drops the rain right back on the mountains from where the water came from, and it just keeps the cycle going. And his point is there's all these cycles to life. He's kind of observing like a monotonousness to life that's really discouraging him in this moment. Verse 8, he says, all things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The eye is never satisfied. You see a movie, you want to watch another one. You watch an episode, you want to see another one. You go and you see one national park, you want to see another one. You always want to see more. You never get a point in life where you go, I've seen enough. I'll just close my eyes till I'm done. No, you just want to keep on seeing. Your eyes are never satisfied in the same way your ears, they're never filled with hearing. You just love hearing more and more things. Verse 9, this gets real kind of philosophical. He says, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. That which has been in the past is what will be, meaning there's nothing new. That which is already done is what will be done. And there's nothing new under the sun. It's just this cycle, whether if it's the sun or it's the wind or it's the water or it's people, it's just this thing that we're living in. Verse 10, is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. Can you point to anything Solomon says and goes, this is a new idea, this is a new thing? He goes, no, it's always been the same way. It's different packaging, but it's the same old stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. There's just this, like, humanity has been the same for thousands of years, and we've improved the way that we do things, but we're still just doing the same thing. We want to communicate, so instead of yelling or writing a letter or talking on the phone or FaceTiming, like, it just keeps developing. But it's all just this desire to communicate. Or we want to go somewhere, and we used to walk, but then we rode horses, and now we drive cars, and it's just like, it's the same thing. It's just a different package that's getting us to the place or accomplishing the task. Verse 11, there's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. No one really remembers what happened back then. No one's going to remember what happens in the future. And you kind of remember probably some important things in your life. And we do have history books and we remember a few things. But generally speaking, overall, a lot of stuff is just forgotten and forgotten. A lot of things that we live and experience and that happen on this planet, nothing. No one knows about it. It's not written down. It just dwindles away with a memory that you've forgotten. And some people's memories are up here, right? And you got to look up there to see them. But even if they're up there, they can still dwindle away. That was a conversation earlier today. Verse 12 says, I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they are to be exercised. So here's kind of his purpose, his motive behind doing this whole thing. He goes, I set in my heart that I should be searching out wisdom concerning everything under heaven, or all the things of earth, we could say. And he recognizes this as a big task, as a burden, but he sees that God has called him to do this, and he believes this is his responsibility to search these things out. Verse 14, I've seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity, and here's a good definition of vanity, grasping at the wind. You try to grab a hold of wind, you're going to come up with a fistful of nothing. That's the idea of vanity. It's just nothing. There's no substance. There's really nothing there. He goes, I've observed all sorts of things throughout life, and they're all the same. No matter what category you place them in, they all come up empty. It's all just like grasping at the wind. It's all vanity. Verse 15, what is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. What's crooked cannot be made straight. You know, sometimes someone does something bad against someone, and that person's response back to them is, I'm going to straighten you out. Well, what's crooked cannot be made straight, at least by you. You actually can't straighten anyone out. You can thump on him a little bit, but that's probably not going to do it. Now, although nothing and man's vantage point that is crooked can be made straight, or what is lacking can be numbered, we can't do it, but God is able to straight out crookedness. God can change people's lives. God can straighten people out, but we can't. Verse 16, I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness, and I've gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. And my heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge. He goes, he's aware of what he asked God all those years ago. He's aware that he has this supernatural wisdom in his head and in his heart. He says, I communed with my heart. I searched deep inside myself, and I said, look, I've attained this great wisdom, and I have gained more wisdom than all who are before me. I'm a wise guy, and my heart has understood these great wisdoms and this knowledge. So in verse 16, his conclusion is, you know, when he says, I have attained greatness and have gained much more wisdom, Solomon say, I've done great things in my life. And then in verse 17, he says, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly, and I perceived that this also is grasping for the wind. So in verse 16, he's done great things, great stuff. And in verse 17, he knows a bunch of stuff. He knows great things. But he goes, even that knowledge and wisdom that I possess, it's just vanity. It's like grabbing at the wind. Because, verse 18, for in much wisdom is much grief. And he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. In much wisdom and is much grief. Greater knowledge, greater sorrow. Because, some things are just better not knowing. There's plenty of things in life, it's like you'd have less heartache, you'd have less sorrow if you were just ignorant about the topic, if you weren't made aware of it. The problem is, the more you know, the more you know. And Solomon's coming face to face with this reality that the deeper I try to search into this world for answers from knowledge, from stuff that this planet has to offer, instead of finding comfort, I'm finding discouragement because I'm just learning a whole bunch of stuff that's actually producing sorrow in my life instead of finding some sort of answer, some sort of good news about the situation. So he kind of, at the end of chapter 1, ends real discouraging of I've committed my life to searching out this knowledge and wisdom, and my conclusion is I'm worse off than when I started. My heart's not happy. I'm full of sorrow. I've increased in grief, and this is the life I'm living. Now, chapter 2 is going to get real interesting, real applicable, I think. And we could almost entitle chapter 2, it says in my Bible, the vanity of pleasure. We could almost entitle it, and I love the American dream, but you could almost entitle this the vanity of the American dream. Watch this. And man, I highlighted these. How do I want to do this? Let me read verses 1 through 11, and because I really want to emphasize these words that he uses, and you'll see where I'm going here real quick. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure, but surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards, and I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them, and I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. And I acquired male and female servants, and I had servants born in my house. Yes, I had great possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of kings of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers and delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. And I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. And I looked on all the works that my hand had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Do you see the theme? He's very much self-focused. He has an I problem. I, me, myself, look at the life I've built. And this is where, as he's observing his life that he's built, he's coming to this conclusion of, what's the point? I'm lacking value. I'm lacking purpose. Back there in verse 1, he said, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this also was vanity. Mirth is literally the idea of gladness. I decided to test my heart with gladness. I decided to go to things or participate in things that would make me happy, maybe like, going to concerts, going to comedy shows, and I'm just going to go to all these things. There's always going to be a next event that I'm waiting for to try to get to so that I can get a bit of that happiness, that gladness out of that situation. But he goes, the problem is that came up empty as well. End of verse 1. That was vanity. That there was no point. I could only watch so many funny movies until it was just like not doing it. Verse 2, I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, of gladness. What does it accomplish? What's the point of laughing? What's the point of being glad? What does it accomplish? There's no value in that, he's saying. Verse 3, I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold of folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. I tried laughter, I tried comedy, all that came up empty. I tried kind of guiding my heart with wine as I would really meditate and think on these deep things, he says. Verse 4, I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted myself vineyards. Solomon, he was the general contractor of the temple. He accomplished great things in establishing the temple there in Jerusalem. He had these big old construction projects, and he goes, I built plenty of houses, and I planted plenty of vineyards for myself. But the problem when you build a house, as soon as you start living in it, it's no longer brand new. Same thing with cars. You buy a brand new car, as soon as you start driving it, it's not new anymore. It's like, that was kind of cool when I didn't, when I wasn't in it. But now that I'm beating it up, it's losing its nice appeal. So things are only good for like so little, and then they don't last, is his whole point. I built all these houses, but they're not going to remain forever. I mean, people, you spend your whole life, most people, 30 years generally, paying off a house, and then, probably most houses don't even last 100 years. And the lot it's on is your house is going to get torn down one day, and someone's going to build something better. And you spend all this time working on it and cutting your grass and planting your gardens, and it's like someone's just going to come in and just wipe it all out one day, dig a big hole, and put a new foundation and build their dream. And then someone's going to do it to them. It's like, that's kind of discouraging. Well, a little bit. Verse 5. I made myself gardens, he says, and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them, and I made myself water pools, these big old holding pools, so that this water could go and water the trees that I planted in the groves. And because I was just so successful, I'm gaining these male, verse 7, these male and female servants. I'm getting position. I'm climbing up the ladder. My business is growing. I got these male and female servants, and these servants that are born in my house. And yes, I have all these great possessions of herds and flocks than all those who are in Jerusalem before me. And I also gathered for myself silver and gold and special treasures of kings and provinces. And I acquired male and female singers, and the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. Man, I just started gathering. I gathered for myself silver and gold. I started saving and finding ways to make all this money, he says, all these treasures. And I get these special treasures from other kings of the land, of the provinces. What I like in verse 8 is he says, I acquired, what part do I want? I also gathered myself silver and gold and special treasures of kings of the provinces. These special treasures, these little things that he's gathering up, these knickknacks, they mean a lot to Solomon, but probably if it works like how it works in our lives, you got grandma that tries to give you something that she got, 50 years ago, and it's really not great. You don't want it. And she gives it to you, like, thanks. And it means a lot to them, but it only means something to you is the point. And Solomon's got all this stuff he's stored up. He's got all these things, and he starts adding singers to his house. They didn't have iPods back then, so you want live music, you get to just hire the people. So he's hired people to sing. And then he falls into a real big trap of vanity, and that's he starts buying musical instruments. And there's no end to that game, right? It's like, Always got to have the new guitar, and now, yeah, or the old guitar, the classic one. And you think, well, isn't one guitar enough? And guitar people will tell you no. It's like people, well, don't you only need one gun? No, you don't need one gun. You need more than one gun. Gosh. So this is the trap he got himself in. Verse 9, he says, so I became great, and I excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom, it remained with me. I just grew, I got big, I multiplied, I prospered. I had it all. If it's not clear by reading this, what Solomon is telling us, I had everything I wanted physically, tangibly. And I enjoyed it all, verse 10. Whatever my eyes desired, I just did it. I didn't keep it back from them. I didn't withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all of my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. If I wanted to look at it, I looked at it. I didn't look away. I didn't close my eyes. There's something in my heart. I thought, I want to see this. I just looked at it. And if there's something that I wanted pleasure-wise, he says, I would just go for it. I didn't withhold anything from myself. And this is a little bit of the danger of the world that we live in today, not even on a sexual level, like a porn level, but like you can find whatever you want. If you have an idea of wanting to see something, all you have to do is Google it and you'll find it. I wonder what a 1995 Toyota 4Runner looks like. I don't have to imagine it. I don't have to work for it. I just have to type it in. Oh, wow. And anything our mind can think of, we can now not just visualize it in our mind's eye, but we can actually have it on a screen in front of us. That's probably not real healthy. Solomon's facing this back then with no technology. We live this constantly. We have a little, I do anyway. I'm constantly asking Google things, and I'm learning all sorts of stuff, which isn't necessarily bad. But the point is, any idea, there's no wrestling. There's just here's a thought, let's see it, got it. Here's a thought, let's see it, got it. Verse 10, whatever my eyes desire, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. So he's just living life. Whatever feels good, he does it. For my heart rejoices in all my labor, and this was my reward from all of my labor. Then I looked on all of the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping at the wind. And there was no profit under the sun. Any building project, any house, any tree, any vineyard, any servant, any treasure, any knickknack, anything that he saw with his eyes, any pleasure that he experienced with his life, he goes, it was all empty. It did not satisfy. None of this stuff, Solomon is realizing, is doing it for me. As he's communicating to us his observation of his life, living it, not with the Lord in it. It's coming. It equals a big old fat zero, he says. Verse 12, then I turned to myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. The guy who's going to succeed the king, what's he going to do? Well, just the exact same thing that the king before him did. Back to this whole cycle, back to this whole there's nothing new thing. Verse 13, then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them both. Foolish people walking around in darkness, wise people walking around in light. And you would think these people are going to have very different things happen to them from life. But he goes, as I observe, the exact same thing can happen to both of them. Whether if you're foolish or wise, tragedy can hit them both. Death hits them both. Neither of them can escape certain things that life throws at them. So the idea is kind of, what's the point of that? What's the point of being wise or being foolish if the exact same thing is going to happen to you regardless? Verse 15, so I said in my heart, as it happened to the fool, it also happened to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said to my heart, this also is vanity. The exact same things that are happening to me in my life are happening in the life of the fool. What's the point? I'm living this vain life Verse 16, for there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever, since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die as a fool? There's no more remembering a wise man than there is a fool. They both die. You keep pictures around until you don't. In my house, I have no pictures. Honestly, I have a painting, but in my house I have no pictures. But I have no pictures of my grandparents. I have no pictures of my great-grandparents. There's no remembrance of them in just my house. You can go up to the cemetery and there's a little headstone and it has their name on it, but that's only there till it tips over one day. And the idea that he's discovering here is it doesn't matter if you're foolish or if you're wise, you get forgotten. And one of the biggest driving forces of people today is, I'm going to make a name for myself, and Solomon's point is, good luck, because it might last a generation, maybe two if you're lucky, and then no one's going to know you. No one's going to know anything about you. No one's going to care. Hagen, this is not real encouraging. Stick to the end. We'll flip this thing on its head a little bit and try to find some sort of hope. Verse 17, therefore, I hated life because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. His conclusion, I just hate life. There's no point. I don't see any value in it. Everything I do does not have any purpose. Verse 18, then I hated all of my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it for the man who will come after me. He starts hating life, and not only that, he starts hating the very things that he did, the work, the labor he put in to gain all of the stuff that he gained back previously in chapter 2. And the reason why he starts hating it is because he comes to this realization that he's going to have to leave it to someone who will come after him one day. And the problem with that, verse 19, is who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled, in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. I can work myself to death, and I can just put in the grind, and I can have this huge nest egg and all these great resources and net worth, and then I'm going to have to leave it to my kids, and who knows how they'll turn out. And Solomon's kid, Rehoboam, he ruined everything. He divided the kingdom. Solomon does all this work, and literally not like months after Solomon dies and Rehoboam takes over, it's a complete disaster. Everything Solomon worked for and was known for disappears just like that. It's like, wow, he could kind of see this coming. He goes, what's the point of leaving an inheritance to my kids if they're idiots? He goes, they didn't work for it. They don't understand the value of it. They don't get it. Verse 20, therefore, I turned to my heart and I despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity of a great evil. The guy who works really, really hard his whole life, and he leaves it to someone who didn't have to work for it. Verse 22, for what has man for all his labor and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful and his work burdensome. Even in night, his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to a sinner, he gives the works of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. Ecclesiastes, like we talked about in our introduction, is all about Solomon observing life, and this phrase that he uses a lot is under the sun. This is what life is like under the sun on this earth without the Lord. The New Testament teaches us about life not under the sun, but in the sun, living in Jesus. And all of this stuff that Solomon has can gain value just like that once Jesus is applied to the equation. There's nothing wrong with anything that Solomon is talking about here tonight in and of itself. It's emptiness because he doesn't see it in light of, and he's not doing his work unto the Lord. That's why he's coming up dissatisfied and not happy and feeling like there's no purpose. But he could build houses, and he could have satisfaction in houses that he builds if he's doing it unto the Lord. He could plant these vineyards. He could have these trees. He could have the pools. He could climb up the ladder. There's nothing wrong with climbing up the ladder. There is a problem with it when Jesus isn't part of the equation, because you realize, you just realize it's not what you thought it was. And that's just the point of all this. I had access to everything. I tried it all. I did it all, and it still came up empty. It reminds me of this quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. Solomon is coming to the conclusion that nothing in this world satisfies him. And Lewis says, ding, 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 that's the point. The answer, you're not created for this world. You're meant to live somewhere else. You're just passing through this place. The problem with living this kind of lifestyle that Solomon's living, of obtaining all of this great success in the world's eyes, but void of the Lord, but lacking Jesus, is that it causes him to lack contentment. And one of the things that we see very clearly throughout the New Testament is that God wants his people to be content. In Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 11, Paul actually says this about contentment. Philippians 4:11 says, not that I speak in regards to need, for I've learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The idea, no matter what season of life you're in, you're content, because here's the thing, here's kind of the heart. If you're not happy now, you'll never be happy. If you're going to be happy in whatever season of life you're in now, and your thought process is, it's that next corner, it's that next decade, it's that next husband, it's that next thing, whatever the thing is that's going to make me happy. If you're not happy now, you're never going to be happy. You have to learn how to be happy, content, satisfied in the state you're in now. If you're trying to chase that contentment, that happiness, you're never going to catch it. Not enough money in the world, not enough pleasure, not a good enough man out there for you. You're never going to get it. You have to be content in the state you're in, happy in the state you're in, because you have Jesus. And then it doesn't matter where you end up. If you climb that corporate ladder, if you do get Prince Charming, whatever the case is, then you're still happy because you've been happy, because your contentment is found in the Lord and not in your circumstances. Solomon's going to be a really good reminder for us time and time again throughout the book of Ecclesiastes that anything this world has to offer us is nothing without Jesus. And if Jesus is part of the equation, then we can find value in anything. If Jesus is in the equation, we can enjoy all sorts of things. But you take him out of it, and you're just going to be grasping the wind. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be lonely. You're going to get to the end of your life, and you're going to say, what was the point? And that's where Solomon is at in this old age. So don't do that. Keep Jesus in the middle of it. Keep him in the center of it. Realize you're made for another world. And all this stuff is not negative. But here's a good litmus test. If you find yourself enjoying the things of this world, if you find yourself trying to enjoy the things of this world, and they're not satisfying you, and you're saying, I don't get it, I'm a Christian, I don't understand why this isn't working, maybe Jesus isn't as involved as you think he is. If you're grabbing for things that you're trying to enjoy and they're just becoming vanity, maybe it's because you're grabbing things Jesus doesn't want you grabbing. Because when you go after the things Jesus has you go after, there's a huge amount of peace and contentment and satisfaction and joy. And you look back on it and you go, that sure wasn't a waste. Oh, it was a headache. It was trial, but it wasn't a waste. It was definitely worth it. So keep Jesus as a part of that. Capiche? Did you guys, we're done. We'll read probably the next 2 chapters, maybe even 3 next week. But did you guys watch some of that Charlie Kirk memorial? Wasn't that something? You know, I've only seen clips. I started watching. My joke is I started watching the pre-worship because it's like 8 hours long. So I'm half an hour in, but I want to watch the whole thing. And, you know, I was just thinking this past week, it's like, in what universe and what planet and what timeline are you ever going to have all these people in one place where you have, and I know this kind of sounds weird, but this is just it, where you have some of the best worship leaders on the planet worshiping and praising Jesus in a room that's full of not all Christians, but a lot of Christians who are bringing Jesus glory. You have awesome pastors and on-fire Christians that are there. Everyone's talking about Jesus. You have our president. You have the vice president. You have all these big shots in his cabinet. You have Elon Musk. You have Dana White. You have these huge profile people, and they all sit through this thing honoring Charlie Kirk, and they cannot escape Jesus, no matter what. And to me, that was just like such a cool thing to watch and to observe and to dream about what God is going to do with this. Because it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to expose these people to Jesus and they're going to very clearly say, I want nothing to do with it. And that's they have that choice. Or it's going to expose them to Jesus and they're going to say, I'm in. I want this. So I don't know. I was really encouraged just from the things that I saw. And we have some goofy people who lead us in this country, quite honestly. But we have some really solid people too. And it was cool to hear that. I mean, J.D. Vance said something along the lines of, I've talked more about Jesus publicly in the past 2 weeks than I have in my whole life. That's awesome that he's doing that, right? And hopefully he keeps it up. But it's like, yeah, keep having these conversations, keep bringing Jesus up publicly. And here's the other thing that I've observed, because I listen to these like kind of talk radio guys a little bit on podcasts, and everyone talks about Charlie Kirk, and they're like, he was so bold to talk about Jesus, and when we remember even just 10 years ago or 15 years ago where we wouldn't even bring up God, and it's like, I think people just like psych themselves out, because like never were you told you can't bring up God. I don't think you just felt like because you were on this national syndicated platform that you had to somehow tiptoe around your belief in Jesus. No, like that's not a thing. And I think this is like waking people up to realize I had this false dichotomy in my head that I thought I couldn't talk about Jesus, but I can. It's like, yeah, dummy, you could do it the whole time. It just took Charlie Kirk dying for you to realize it. I don't understand why, but it did, and I think people are seeing that, and they're waking up to it, and I think it's going to be really cool. I think what's coming up next is really cool, yeah. That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that in and of itself has got to be a witness to so many people. I mean, it's one thing for someone to suggest that. It's another thing to come out of her mouth on that day. Yeah, it's crazy. And my favorite part about the whole thing, and again, I've only watched clips. I haven't watched the whole thing. My feeling about it is that it wasn't religious at all. There was nothing churchy about it. There was nothing religious about it. It was just, we're just people. And we're just people who love Jesus, and we're just honoring our friend that was assassinated. It felt so natural and just not religious to me, and I thought that was really refreshing to see as well. But anyway, let's pray. This Sunday, we're going to be in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So read ahead there. We're going to see Paul give some practical instruction on how we need to be living our lives. And he's going to talk to us about the rapture. So read there in chapter 4 of 1 Thessalonians. But let's sing.